everyone, and welcome to another episode of Kicks and Curve podcast. This is the Community Shield Liverpool preseason transfer edition. I feel like it's been so long since I've done an episode like this, just about my beloved Liverpool. I mean, in reality, I did an Isak episode, I think, a couple of weeks ago, but I was sick at the time, so didn't register. And I am bursting to talk about Liverpool, especially because there are a lot of things that I feel like Liverpool fans, I think, need to take a little bit of a chill pill. Like, there are concerns, um, valid concerns, but it's not as bad as everybody is making it out to be. So let's get into all of it. And we'll get into all of it, like the transfers, the defenders, the community shield, the Isak, Rodrigo, all of it. We'll do that. I'll do that because I'm bursting to talk about my beloved Liverpool. So, Community Shield, I will start off with congratulating Crystal Palace. Congratulations on your win. Um, yeah, that's it. Congratulations. I am not too fussed. I personally wasn't too fussed about it. Before we get into the actual game, Crystal Palace fans booing the 1 minute silence for Diogo Jota. Like, I don't have any hate. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I've seen a lot of Crystal Palace fans posting on various social medias apologizing to Liverpool. And a lot of Liverpool fans who were actually at Wembley were saying that, you know, it was like a small section of fans and people surrounding them were trying to shush them and everything. So it could be because Liverpool fans booed the national anthem. It could be because they were booing the UEFA decision, which is fucked up, by the way. And or it could just be like, people coming in late did not know that the silence was going on, and because there was a silence and their voices were amplified, and then people reacted to that, and then everybody starts shushing, and so like it's okay. I mean, I wish it didn't happen this way, but the what I mean by saying is it doesn't matter is that I don't think there was a malicious intent. I don't think anybody was doing it deliberately to not pay their respects to Diogo Jota. I think we can give people the benefit of the doubt. So now let's get into the match. I also think that like that whole debacle of what happened in that silence also kind of like annoyed VVD and Salah. I'm not making excuses for their games, like they did not have good games, but like I'm just saying that okay, we'll get into it. See, so good things first. Let's talk about Alisson. The safest hands in Liverpool belong to Alisson Becker. Another impeccable performance. Yes, we did concede 2 goals. One of them was a penalty, which was not a penalty we thought we would concede, but there was just one open play goal. And it's okay. It's okay in the grand scheme of things. To me personally, at least, the Community Shield does not matter. Of course, it's good if you start the season by winning something, but I think we needed the shock to the system. So, not too fast. The new signings looked really good, working very well together, especially Florian Wirtz and Ugo Ekitike. Amazing link up together. Frimpong and his pace is so rapid. What flair, man. I genuinely enjoyed watching Jeremy Frimpong and his celebration. Damn good. I really enjoyed him. I enjoy his energy. Um, and yeah, I'm just genuinely buzzing to see Liverpool play, and I'm so excited that the first game of the season is Liverpool versus Bournemouth, because like I get to watch my team like sooner than like having to wait till like Sunday or something. Mo Salah did not have a good game. Okay, I'm just laying it out. And the same goes for Van Dijk as well. I'm not going to sit here and justify their poor game. Maybe a little bit. But the thing I take as a positive is that we still got 2 goals. Like we still created chances and we did get the goals. I mean, sure, our end product needs improving, but last season with Salah being involved in like 70% of all Liverpool goals, this is what we needed. We need to kind of phase Salah out. I know it sounds harsh to say, but in all in all possibilities, I think this is probably Van Dijk and Salah's last contract with Liverpool. So there is going to come a time in 2 years where, you know, Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk will not be playing for Liverpool. So, and I feel like the kind of players that we've signed, we are taking the creative pressure of Salah and we are also taking the finishing pressure of Salah. And yeah, he did not have a good game. He missed his penalty also, but like it's okay. He's allowed to have an off day at work. It's okay. Like people, like, let's not jump on this like bandwagon of like being this reactionary, okay? Mohamed Salah has done it for us for nearly a decade now. Like this will be his 10th season with us, or was last season the 10th season? This will be his 10th season, I think. So he's literally done it, or maybe 9th season, whatever, close to a decade. He's done it for us. And last season, he was literally the one carrying us, be it goals, so many comebacks against Aston Villa, against Newcastle, against like so many times Mohamed Salah was there. So I think again, benefit of doubt, he has earned it. He is literally our best player, our best attacking threat. So it's okay. Like, let's not. I've seen so many posts about who should be our new penalty taker because Salah missed 2 in preseason. Like, let him miss them, man. Let him get it out of his system. He got 11 out of 12 last season. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Do you think every striker, do you think Isak scores every single chance that he gets? Do you think Haaland scores every single chance he gets? Like, come on. I feel like Mohamed Salah is like a victim of his own brilliance, right? Because he's set the standard so high. We expect an unreal level of perfection from him. And like, let's all remember that he is human and he is allowed to have an off day. The good thing to take is that if Mo Salah is having an off day, we have other people who can create goals, who can finish goals, which is a good thing to have in the team. The question that I think we need to ask is why Arne Slot is so reluctant to take off Mohamed Salah, and we might get into it later in this episode. So, one thing I would have to say about our preseason is that we did not play a single game with the best 11 that we could have. Now, I think this was supposed to be the Atletico Bilbao game, but could not happen because, of course, McAllister was given a 2-month break because of an issue that he had towards the end of the season, and Arne Slot wanted to give him time, and now he's coming back. He's joined training and he's building his fitness back up to those levels. So McAllister was not going to play, and I think that McAllister absolutely 100% makes our best 11. We'll get to the midfield and what I think is going to be our like strongest midfield going forward if everybody is fit and available. And in that same game, Van Dijk had an illness, and which is why he was just not in the game. So, like I said, like it was a stupid penalty to concede, something that we do not expect from Van Dijk. But again, like because he's been such a stalwart for us in that back line, we expect unreal levels of perfection, and like slip ups can happen, did happen. It does not change the fact that out of the 3 center backs that we currently have, Van Dijk is still the best out of those 3 for us. So like let's not get all this reactionary like kind of attitude. Okay, but I will concede this. Defensive reinforcements are needed, and what has frustrated me a lot is that why has it taken so long? To an extent, I do have an answer for this, but I still think that this has gone on long enough. And like now we are in the last 2-3 weeks of the transfer window, and we should be sorting this issue out, especially because this Isak saga is just, oh my god, it is so annoying. And we will get into Isak as well. So, defensive, so like, here's what I think. We sell Kwanzaa, we wanted to get in a young center back, like a Hato or a Leone, like we are being linked right now. But then we started having all these reports coming from Spain. Oh, Ibu Konate running down his contract, keen on joining Real Madrid. At that time, talks between Liverpool and Konate were not happening for a new deal. And like there were a lot of reports, and I don't know what is true or not, but like what I do know is that Liverpool and Konate were not talking over a new deal. And because of that situation, I think Mark Gahey came out as a good option. Like it's a good market opportunity to have somebody of Mark Gahey's caliber, his experience, to bring into the team, not just to like have healthy competition for the center back position, but also like we can rest Van Dijk for some games. Like literally last season, the only time Van Dijk rested in the league games, like I mean, sure there must be cup games where he did not start, but like the only time he did rest was after it was in the Chelsea game, was in the second Chelsea game after we were mathematically won the title. So I feel like if we have like Gahey and Konate both, there could be some games where we can have the centre back pairing of Mark Gahey and Ibu Konate and rest Virgil van Dijk. This is also World Cup year, so international breaks are going to be intense for everybody. Everybody wants to qualify for the World Cup. Like every single player wants to do that. So all of that happened. Now reports have come that you know all of this bullshit about like Ibu wanting Real Madrid is like not true. Ibu does not really want to leave Liverpool. He's keen on signing a new deal. And so again, now reports are coming out that we want Leone from Parma because of course Gerald Hato has gone to Chelsea. My point is make a decision and sign the player. That's it. That's it. Our third choice centre back is currently injured. And like let's not get into and like fall into the trap of like what Arne Slot has said in his press conferences, right? He cannot come out and say that yes, we are desperate for a centre back, so that clubs where we are going to buy these players can just jack up the prices. So of course he's going to come out and say that we have Endo who can cover that position, we have Gravenberch who can cover that position, but like it is very clear that Liverpool are looking to bring in at least one, if not more, centre backs. So I feel like what is frustrating to me is the amount of time it is taking. Just like just make a decision. I personally think we need two, because I am very skeptical of Joe Gomez's availability. Joe Gomez was very close to leaving Liverpool last season, but I think that we did not want to make a lot of changes last season because we wanted to see if Arne Slot can work with this set of players, that we knew were capable of winning at least some form of trophy, because this team had won at least a Carabao Cup last season, or like the season before that. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like out of the four centre backs that we had, Arne had to decide which one can he let go of to bring in a centre back of his choosing, and I think Kwanzaa was the obvious answer. It could also have been the fact that we would get the most money for him. It could also have been the fact that for his own personal development, because Liverpool have included a buyback clause in the deal with Bayer Leverkusen. So maybe we were like, rather than letting him go out on a loan, we would put in a buyback clause, um, if his development goes as per plan. So I feel like we just decide. If it is Mark Gehi, get Mark Gehi. Like I get the point of not wanting to pay 50 million for a player who has like 1 year contract left, and I feel like if Mark Gehi is the player that we want to go for, it is going to happen very, very late. Like Crystal Palace will have to be desperate because Mark Gehi has made it absolutely clear that he is not going to sign a new deal. From the reports, because of like Levi Colwell's injury for Chelsea, I was worried because of like Gehi's buyback clause that Chelsea has, but like reports are that they are not looking at Gehi. Um, Even if they are looking at a center back, of course they've got Gerald Hato, who's a left back but can also play center back. So maybe that's how they intend to use him. Whatever is the case, but like the reports that I have heard say that Chelsea are not going for Gehi, and I'm not really scared of like losing out to Chelsea, but like I think their project is also very exciting. First and second, like the only reason I am like a little bit concerned is because of the buyback clause, because he was a Chelsea player, Mark Gehi. Um, so even for like in my head we need to, even if one of the players is going to be like an academy player, but you still want to close in on both these targets, which is I think Leonie and Margehi are like the most prominent. It's going to be either or both. So like just make that decision. However it is that you want to do it, like just get that done. Because this Isak saga is going to continue and we have to focus on our attacking depth also. Um Gravenberch was missed. Of course, he missed the game for personal reasons. Congratulations to him and his partner on becoming parents. Um, so this midfield is not going to be our starting midfield. Okay, I think it is fairly clear that Florian Wirtz is going to be our number 10, and he is going to mostly be number 10, just like Mo Salah is our right winger. I think Florian Wirtz is going to be number 10. How much Arne decides to rotate either of them remains to be seen, but I feel like for the remaining two positions in the midfield, we have five possible options. We have Gravenberch, we have Endo, we have Curtis Jones, we have McAllister, and we have Szoboszlai. Now, Szoboszlai can also play the 10, and Graven and Endo have traditionally been 6 for us. Also, we have Trey Neone, Lucas Stephenson, and Stefan Bajektic, all young options that could also be given the time, should be given the time. It depends on the manager, but I feel like you cannot go and buy every single player. Like, you can't. Not just because, oh, money concerns, this, that, but also because, like, for the young ones, you need to give them that chance. Like for them to have this opportunity to be playing for the first team Liverpool, to be playing with the players of the caliber of Van Dijk, Salah, Florian Wirtz, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Allison, like Andy Robertson, like all of these players, like they also need to have this clear pathway. Like yes, we can be the next Trent or like Curtis Jones or Cheryl Kwanzaa. Like I didn't want to just name Scousers, but like we can be a breakout star if we improve our game, if we work hard to to be able to deliver what the manager wants. So I feel like let's not rush into this thing of like we need midfield reinforcement. We don't You can't block all your youngsters. Like why would then youngsters want to sign for us if there is never going to be a chance to play in the Liverpool first team? We can't have this. Like we've always trusted our academy players. Floppo did it a lot, and I think Arne has different requirements from our academy, and I think now we will be recruiting more in line of what his requirements are going to be. So I feel like you still need to have this kind of like a pipeline for these players to come up and take up those positions and be given some time. So I feel like another advantage of giving them this opportunity is also that it helps us with the homegrown um, criteria. Like if we want to register 25-person squad, we need to have at least 7 homegrown players. Is it? Yeah, 7 homegrown players, right? And I think currently we are on 6. I'm not sure. I didn't make the list and everything, but yeah. So again, it's a good way to get around the homegrown aspect of it in case we don't have a lot of homegrown players, because we have had a bunch who have left. Kwanzaa left, Trent left, Veen Kelleher left, Elliot is going to leave. All 4 of them are homegrown players. And like we've brought in Frimpong, who is going to be classed as homegrown. Mark Gahey will be classed as homegrown if we get him. So like we've had 4 of them go out and only possibly 2 come in. So that is a problem. We won't be able to register a full 25 people squad. So like get some of these players. I think Rio and Umoha is going to be in that squad, and Trey Stephenson, whoever it is that the manager wants, whatever the manager wants. Now attacking depth. Let's come to attack, okay? And here I'm going to talk only about wingers and strikers. Like I think the number 10 position, the attacking midfielder, we've talked about it in the midfield. So I'm just talking about wingers and strikers, okay? We need 6. We need 6, let's be honest. Like of course there's not going to be any player who can like compete with Mo Salah, but like let's just say that we need him as just a rotation option, okay? Sometimes Mo Salah does not need to play. We need to rest him. Father Time is catching up with him and with Virgil van Dijk, and this is their last chance. This is their last contract. So let's give at least more. Let's give him the best chance to be able to get the output that he wants, because he wants to break records. He wants to climb in those all-time stats tally and everything. So that is what it is. So like we need at least 6. Now considering that Elliot and Chiesa will leave, which again today I saw some random account that said that now with the lack of attacking options we are considering Chiesa. I don't want that. I don't want this pity Chiesa, let's keep him because we don't have more players. If you're going to say in press conferences that Rio is going to get more time in the first squad, then I'm going to assume, Arne, that what you're saying is right, and that you genuinely see Rio as a left wing option. But like even if we consider Rio, okay, we have what? Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, Ekitike. We have 3. We currently have 3. Considering Rio, we will have 4. So we need at least 2. Of course, Isak. We'll get to Isak. But before this whole thing started, I think the reports were that Arne wanted like a versatile player, somebody who can play across the front line. Now Chiesa is that player, but for some reason Arne does not want to use it. And again, I do not want this pity thing of like, oh, because we can't get another player, we are going to use Chiesa. I do not want Arne Slot, if we are ever in a difficult match, I do not want Arne Slot to turn to the bench and have a single player there who he thinks he cannot use. I don't want that. If we are going to keep Chiesa, let's be very clear that we will be using him then. That's it. I think his cameos last season were, I mean, sure, they were not the best in quality, but then what do you expect when a player is not getting any sort of regularity in terms of his minutes? They had a mini preseason for him, his fitness was a problem, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But like once everything was said and done, like once he was like up to speed and everything, why then were we still so reluctant? Especially when like that was around the time when Mo started having his kind of like his down kind of a season, like that period. So like why would you not give Chiesa a chance? And like a lot of what I've heard a lot of people or like a lot of reporting is that it was the Plymouth game and the fact that he was not able to do much against Plymouth, and like I get it, but again, like you've just made a ragtag team of 11 to go and play Plymouth in the FA Cup because we had heavy fixtures coming up for Premier League, and again, these are players who have not played together and who have not played any semblance of like regular minutes. And the goal that we conceded was a very unfortunate penalty that was conceded. I don't see why Chiesa would be the only one who is being blamed for that loss. It was not even Chiesa's mistake that led to the penalty. It was Harvey Elliott. Maybe that is the reason he does not want to use Harvey Elliott. But like mistakes are a part of it. I don't think that is true. But like whatever it is, I don't want him to keep him for pity reasons or like let's not. I understand we are not a club that panic buys. We are not the club who's going to be like, oh my god, let's just buy anyone for the sake of it to build depth. No, we are very deliberate in the business that we do. So I can see from that point of view why keeping Chiesa is going to be a quote unquote useful, quote unquote, why am I saying it when I can do it, um as an easier solution. But I would rather than you keep Harvey Elliott because I don't trust Harvey Elliott more than Chiesa. Like we've seen more cameos from Harvey than we've seen from Chiesa. So we need to get in this versatile player. Okay, Arne wanted this versatile player. Chiesa, I think, is going to leave. I do not want. I am so scared that okay, and like I think this Isak delay is the reason why we are not able to decide which kind of player we want to. I feel like if we are not able to get Isak, we would go for a bombshell left winger who can also play on right. Someone like a Rodrigo or a Barcola, which is what the links have been. But if we can get Isak, I think we will go for somebody like a Malik Fofana, like somebody who's young, versatile player who can play either of the three positions or at least two positions out of three. Especially if we are getting like Isak, we technically need somebody who can play on either of the wings. Of course, Frimpong is another option to play at right wing, and Connor Bradley. I think Connor Bradley had a knock or something, but yes. So get in that player, and Isak thing is going to give me a headache, but we will talk about it. But yes, overall, I can understand the disappointment that we did not win. I can understand the concerns that Liverpool fans are feeling over the performances. But let's not forget, like it's preseason, okay? This is the time to try new things. This is the time to get minutes in the legs of all the players. This is the time to gel together. This is the time of experimentation. Do I think that this is going to be the team against Bournemouth? Do I think that, I mean, of course, Gravenberch is suspended um, for that match, and I feel like our midfield is going to be then McAllister, Soberslai, and Florian Wirtz. So, and I feel like that is our midfields is either going to be Gravenberch, Wirtz, or one of Maka or Soberslai. I think it will depend on tactics, what our game plan is, because I feel like they're two very different kinds of midfielders who can both play the eight position, but they play it very differently. So I feel like it will depend on tactics. I also feel like the way Arne is building this squad is he expects a lot of flexibility between positions, especially in attack and in midfield. So I'm not concerned. I'm the thing I'm concerned about is our like kind of like this lackluster way of like sorting out this defender situation. But other than that, in terms of performance and everything, I'm not. There were a lot of mitigating circumstances in this game, and I understand that. I understand that. If we had like Connor Bradley, I feel like Mo Salah could have been subbed off. But like I don't think Mo was subbed off. Yeah, he wasn't subbed off. So like I feel like if we had Connor Bradley, we could have subbed him on as the right back, and then Frimpong could have moved to right wing, and we could have had more off. So like we were not we were not at like 100% availability of all the players, which again like um you know highlights the fact that we need those defensive reinforcements, and also we need the attacking depth, because once Ekitike and Florian Wirtz came off, we were unable to do anything, which is kind of our problem. Like even last season, like Crystal Palace playing a low block, like low blocks were a problem last season, and Wirtz, Ekitike were able to break through it, which is a good thing, which is the kind of thing we need from those players, and this is the reason why we brought them in for our club. So like it is working, it is working. It just did not result in like in the outcome that we wanted for this match, but like it does not matter. This game did not matter. So let's all calm down, let's all trust the process, and let's also remember to give grace to these players, because this team is still grieving. Every single game where we have seen some form of respect being given to Diogo Jota and Andre Silva's memory, like you can see it on these players. If you if you I got, like in the Preston game, I literally got chills when we observed the silence for the brothers, for Diogo and for Andre. That silence was so loud, in the sense that you could hear a pin drop there, and it was like just so heavy with grief, and it was so raw. These players have had to grieve for the loss of a loved colleague, somebody that, and especially the players who were there in Liverpool since way before. Like they have been, they saw Jota come in 2020 after we won our league title. So like it's the absence of Jota is a big presence in the changing room, and it weighs heavy on them. And yeah, we can look at behind the scenes content, we can look at like training video and everything, and it's all fun and games, and yeah, like all those things are there because like football moves on. We do not have the option, Liverpool does not have the option to be like, we need to grieve, we need 6 months off. That is not, we can't like it cannot be accommodated, right? So let's give them grace. There are going to be difficult periods in this season. We are not just going, like we probably would have gone into this season like very well poised to defend our title, but now we are going with a very heavy heart. Let's give grace to these people. Let's understand that they are human, and let's remember that every time that people start applauding at 20th minute, every time there is any kind of memorial or respect being paid to Diogo Jota and Andre Silva, like those things are going to come up. And yes, with time it is going to get easy, but like I still think that it is raw. Like we as football fans have moved on now. It's not in the sense that we don't care about this tragic loss that football saw as a sport, as a community, that we had to go through. But for these players, it was something more. He was a teammate, he was a comrade, they celebrated their highs together, they consoled each other during their lows. They have been through a lot together, and so like let's just remember that. And it's going to be a tough season, not just because of football or like difficult opponents and everything, but because of this very big grief that we will be carrying um throughout the season, and maybe even beyond. I don't know, like it's going to be difficult. So, and now let's come to one of the most annoying things, is the Alexander Isak drama. Now it has come out that he is adamant. He's never going to play against for Newcastle. He is done with the club. If reports are to be believed, this is like as good as putting in a transfer request, right? He's said it. I am never, even if you don't sell me, I do not want to play for Newcastle United again. If reports are to be believed, he has apparently put his house on rent. He's moved out of Newcastle. Like, Newcastle mismanagement has caused these problems, okay? Promises that were made to Alexander Isak were broken. Reports suggesting that like he had informed the club last season was his final season for Newcastle and the club has denied it. But like I find it hard to believe, like what to believe, because when the first time it started, Newcastle said that Isak is not playing whatever game I think it was against Celtic, whatever preseason game that they had, he was not playing because of an injury. And then Eddie Howe, after before the game, said that he let Isak go home because of all the transfer speculation. So like they're not on the same page, and it has been like just a shit show in the way that Newcastle have managed this entire situation. Like, and I do not understand Newcastle's stance and their insistence on like first we should get Alexander Isak's replacement. Like, why are you making it tough? Why are you making it tougher for yourself? Have that, get that big payday. Like, if you're worried that, oh, because we will get paid, then people are going to jack up their price. Bro, it is very obvious that you need strikers. Like, it's just everybody knows it now. Every single club knows it. This shit has been talked about for so long. Like, when did we get Ekitike? We got Ekitike. He was like, our team was on the Asia tour. I think it would be like end of July or something. Like, so it this has gone on for like, this has now been going on for a couple of weeks now. So I do not get this insistence. Like, you're ruining, possibly ruining the dressing room, can create like doubt in other teammates. Like, what? How are you treating your star player like a young player looking to come to Newcastle would 100% think that like if this is the possibility that if I have the opportunity to go to a big club and Newcastle is going to behave this way, I'd rather not make the move. And I know like Newcastle fans are like, oh my god, these journalists, they are the ones who are making this shit up. No, 100%. If you go for a job, do you not look for people who worked in that job to ask them what the fucking working culture is, what the environment is? If you have a friend who's recommended you for a job in their organization, would you not ask them what the culture is like? What how is the stress level, how does it work? Like, of course you're going to. So like, and this is being played out in public so much. Like, I do not understand, like, why couldn't Newcastle just sell Isak to us when we first came in with our bid? Why not engage Liverpool and be like, we are going to come to the table for this discussion, provided that you ensure that you will give us a free run for Ekitike? Why not make it a condition for you to even engage in the conversation about Alexander Isak? It was worth a shot. I don't know if whether Liverpool would have agreed to it or not. I think we might have, but like, listen, anybody suggesting that Ekitike was just a backup to Isak was not true, because I don't think that when the links started coming out about what striker targets we were looking at, because it was very, very, very clear that Darwin Núñez was not going to be here. Given the fact that even when he was available, Arne Slot would rather play Luis Diaz as striker. So I feel like we had a very clear idea that we will need a new striker, and Hugo Ekitike was one of the first names that I had heard being linked as the player that we were looking at. So I don't think we've got like a replacement or like our second choice striker or something like that. Ekitike was on our radar, so like why not just do it? I'm just tired of this, like, Newcastle fans. Oh my god. Liverpool tapping up Isak. Do you know what tapping up is? Tapping up is what Real Madrid did to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Liverpool approached Newcastle United with an official bid. We did not whisper in Alexander Isak's ears and ask him to run down your counter. We are literally willing to pay you a British transfer record fees. Do you know how much we got for Trent? 8.5 million pounds. You know why we got it? Because it was the Club World Cup and they were desperate to get him in. That is the only reason. If there wasn't a Club World Cup, he would have gone for free. That is tapping up. That is tapping up. So I don't understand all these accusations. Alan Shearer, at the time when all this Trent saga was going on, like the entire footballing community, right? Everybody was like, oh my god, Liverpool fans being this, that, oh my god, let him go. Like, he's done everything. And now they're literally giving the same argument. Like, why is it different for Isak? Huh? He's getting your British transfer record fees. He's not a Geordie. Trent was a Scouser. Is a Scouser. I don't know if he's. I will let Liverpool locals, you decide if he's still a Scouser or not. But like, I don't understand. Like, Newcastle fans, all this talk about like we made him who he is. His talent made him who he is. You gave him a platform to showcase the world what he's capable of. And as a payment for that, he won you your first trophy in 70 years. And after you win one trophy, you think that you're just now a big club. Why? Because you're this narrative of like, we are the richest club in the world. Like, I watched a True Geordie video, who's a big Newcastle fan, and he was like, our club, like, our owners can literally buy Liverpool and like not even think twice. Like, we are the richest fucking club. No, your owners are rich. Like, what? There are PSR rules, and they've been slagging off PSR as if like it is PSR's fault. It is not. Everybody voted. Everybody voted for those rules. And this thing of like, oh, it's the big six cartel, I think Chelsea, City, and United were like either they abstained or they were against it, but like everybody else was in agreement for PSR. So your club was in agreement of PSR. You're just sad that your owners bought you and then haven't been able to do what City have done. And I do not get it. Like, why are your owners not investing in like in different ways of generating revenue? Why not expanding the stadium? Why not developing your academy? Why you not like, there are so many ways to do these things. Like, your revenue is the problem. Like, oh, Isak has been disrespectful. As if the fans haven't. Have you seen the discourse around Isak? Like, Newcastle fans will not admit at all that it is in any way, shape, or form the club's fault of like not meeting with Isak's ambitions and reneging on the promises that were made to him. And there was literally a banner at the Newcastle ground saying Isak is a pure rat. And so, like, what do you expect him to do? Like, if all these reports are true, he hasn't wanted to be there at Newcastle. He didn't want to be there last season. He stayed because of the respect that he has for Eddie Howe, for his teammates, and because he wanted to give Newcastle a chance to kind of secure his replacement. This is another one that I've heard. Oh, we only started looking for strikers after he started kicking the first. Like, this is the list of Newcastle's transfers, failed transfers, players who have said no. When did Delap go to Chelsea? When did João Pedro go to Chelsea? When did Cunha go to Manchester United? I think it was well before Isak started kicking up a fuss. And all of these three players can play striker. João Pedro and Liam Delap are literally strikers. Cunha is Striker Cam, I don't know. He's an attacking player. Like all of them. So don't put this on us. Okay? It was not us. Newcastle had been looking for strikers well before Liverpool came in with their bid. So all this bullshit of like, oh, Liverpool unsettled the player. Liverpool are tapping up Isak. All of this is not true because you were looking at strikers way before. And I mean, yeah, you can say, oh, it's like Callum Wilson's replacement and everything. I don't think so. I'm sorry, but like Buemo, like Liam Delap, I can understand because he's a younger kind of a striker. But I'm sorry, I do not believe it for 1 second that it was not Isak's replacement. So, but like whatever it is, however it is that you want to deny it, like it that is your prerogative. But my point is that, you know, especially this being a World Cup year, like you have to just imagine how frustrated and upset Alexander Isak is with Newcastle to be like, I do not care if you don't sell me. I will never play for you again. Like, and he's a striker, and Sweden has another striker. So he's willing to forego like his chance to play for Sweden, potentially. Like, I don't know how the Swedish national team coach is going to react to all of this, but like I I cannot, like, and still Newcastle are insistent on not selling him. Why? I do not understand. Like, literally, if you open the door, like, this entire saga could be done in 4 or 5 days. Like, it like, even right now, like, irrespective of whether or not you get Isak's replacement, one thing he's made it clear: he doesn't want to play with you. Or play for you, sorry, play with you. That sounded so wrong. But yeah. And like the fans, again, another True Geordie video that I saw where he said like he wishes the worst to Isak, and that if Isak were to suffer a career-ending injury, he would have no sympathy. Really, really, really. I know. It is like one channel, one fan, or everything. But like, really, to this extent, like the guy literally won you a trophy last season. A season where he didn't want to be at your club. A season where he gave you time. He was like, okay, you know, I want to leave, but we'll give you time. And here is where I feel like this is how bad Newcastle have been. They needed a goalkeeper. Okay? Kevin Kelleher was available. Why not? And now they're crying about the fact that, oh my god, James Trafford went to Manchester City. All these big six are stealing our players. Why? Why are you going for players like that? When you have PSR issues, when you are unable to spend the way big clubs are able to spend. The reason we are able to spend this way is because of our revenue, and your revenues are not like that. Hence, your profits are not like that, and so you are unable to spend as much to be within the PSR limits. So, why are you going for targets like that? Queen Kelleher went for 18 million. 18 million. You would rather have Aaron Ramsdale on a loan from Southampton than go for Queen Kelleher. It just goes to show how bad this entire Newcastle management is. To go into a transfer window that was so important after you got Champions League again, without a sporting director, without a CEO, like I do not get it. So Newcastle fans, just stop. Just stop. And Newcastle, open the door, get this deal done. Like, just, I want resolution for us. So many things. Like, it's like a domino effect that needs to happen. But, like, Newcastle, for some reason, are adamant. And I do not, like, of course, they're going to blame Isak for being disrespectful. This, that, they're going to do anything and everything. And they will throw him under the bus. anything and everything except put even a little ounce of blame upon themselves. It takes two to tango, man. Like, and the way this is escalated now, not only there is going to be no new contract, not only did you not capitalize on the first bid that came in, and you could have negotiated a free run for Ekitike. Now he does not want to play for you, and you're backed into a corner. Like it's a lose-lose situation. Like even if, let's say, right now Newcastle, if Liverpool were to approach, can you honestly say that, oh, what this stupid 150 million price tag? Can you honestly, do you think you're in a position where you can be like, no, it's 150 or nothing? Because you still have a player who does not want to play for you. So what are you going to do? He's one of your highest paid players. So what? You're just going to keep his wages on your books? And I mean, sure, there could be legal actions that you could take against him, and like it could become a shit show of even more of a shit show if possible. I mean, sure, go nuts. What can I say? But like the easier option is just get it done, man. He does not want you, and it's okay. Okay, now let's get into the Rodrigo thing. It's the last thing that I'm going to talk about. So, today, I think it was today, yeah, today Fabrizio Romano has tweeted that Manchester City are considering move for Rodrigo after imminent exits. Grealish is gone, McCarthy and Savinio can leave, and City see Rodrigo as dream target, and Pep Guardiola is a big fan. Real Madrid will let him leave if player wants, and the asking price is going to be around 100 million euros. Now, this has a lot of people rattled for some reason, and I can understand from an Arsenal point of view. Okay, um, I can understand that, but like, why are Liverpool fans being so intense about this? Like, yes, he's a great player, and Pep is a great manager, but like, Rodri's injured. City did not have a good Club World Cup, and that has compromised their preseason. They have a lot of new incomings. They have a lot of very experienced, very good players go. And like, we need to see more from this team. Like, their attack looks good, but defensively, I think they're weak. They need a right back. And also, like, I kind of unable to understand why some Liverpool fans are like kind of overreacting to this news and being like, oh my god, City could be favorites going into the season. I'm not saying that it's not going to be like Liverpool is going to walk the league or something like that. I'm not at all saying that. What I'm saying is that, you know, we are Liverpool. We have gone 2-2 with prime Manchester City. Okay, the Manchester City of like 2016, 17, 18, that time. We have lost a league at 97 points. And we still have those players who played when we lost the league at 97 points. They know what it takes to beat prime Manchester City. We next year, the year after that, after losing at 97 points, we won the league at 99 points. So I have trust not just in the manager, but like it's it's why saving our spine, like making sure that we are able to retain our spine was important. It's because like this kind of like the standards that Liverpool players set and like the standards that fans have for the team are passed down from like the old guard to the new guard. Like Van Dijk, Allison, Salah, Andy Robertson. These are like the players who saw what the Klopp era was, and they were kind of like the flag bearers of what that era was. Of course, Trent as well, but like he's fucked off to Spain. But now these people are going to teach the next generation what it is like, and we are going to have that kind of a transition. And so, like, I don't see, I'm not saying that City won't be competitive. I am not saying that City are going to fall off or anything. If anything, like I think that once Rodri comes back, they are going to be crazy. So like I think that maybe second half of the season, which is what City have done. And again, like we've been through this, and like we never underestimate City ever. And like to me, like the solution is very clear. Okay, of course we go to every single game to win it. There are no two doubts about it. We are never going to go on the field with the express intent of drawing or losing a game. Just not going to do that. So what I will say is the only time we can actually affect our title rivals and the amount of points that they get from like their matches is when we play them. So I feel like, of course, you have to win every single game, but like all the games against your title rivals, which I think is going to be a four-way fight. I genuinely think that Chelsea are in this. So like Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal. So like 6 games. These 6 games are must win. If you get a win, it's not a 3-point swing in your favor, it's a 6-point swing. Because not only have you added 3 to your tally, you've made sure that the opponent does not get 3. That's a 6-point swing in your favor. So the games against our title rivals are must win. Every game is a must win, of course, but you know, you're not going to win every single game. So, but we cannot have, like, this is the best time for us to make sure in any capacity that we can affect their Premier League outcome. And yeah, that's it. Like, I feel like um yeah, I'm just excited. Oh, also another thing on the whole Rodrigo thing, I don't know about like the Liverpool links to Rodri. Most of the reports that I've seen have come from Spain, and I've had more than enough reports from Spain, so I'm going to take all of them with a pinch of salt. Reports are like that we would go for either like a Malek Fofana and or like a Bradley Barcola. So I don't know. But like, all I know is that I want the Isak thing to conclude. Rodrigo to Manchester City. Yes, it's a big deal, but it's not as big a deal as everybody's making it out to be. Maybe for Arsenal, but not for us. We have the capacity to go toe to toe. We have gone toe to toe with Manchester City in the past. We are capable of doing it again. Um, Community Shield, preseason, and everything, like doubts do not matter. Need defensive reinforcement, need attacking depth. Midfield is fine for now, and let's give some youngsters some chances to break into the first team. I think, yeah, that's the TLDR of this video, this very long video. But until next time, which is probably going to be like our preseason predictions. Take care. Bye.